Howdy, folks! Happy Wednesday, happy Hump Day. Well, you didn't want to hear the debate that Russ and I were just having.
Nope.
And believe me, I'm not interested in discussing it. But we're gonna be talking.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair if we should tell people. I mean, it was Tang versus Kool-Aid. Where do you fall? It was a heated debate.
Tang all the way. Neil Armstrong.
I don't know. I'm in team Kool-Aid.
No, Neil, come on. Kool-Aid breaks through the brick wall and ruins people's houses with that bull crap. And Tang, all it does is provide you vitamin C goodness.
Listen, the Hey Kool-Aid guy would be the coolest guy at any party. You know it, and I know it.
Was the Hey Kool-Aid thing breaking through the wall? Was that a Simpsons thing, or was that
no? That happened even when I was a kid, and it was like he'd break through the wall and be like, "Oh yeah."
Jesus.
And I'm telling you, I don't know what was more sugary.
Oh,
Kool-Aid? No, Kool-Aid or a Pixie Stick. It's close.
Well, cool. Pixie Stick is pure sugar.
Yeah.
But Kool-Aid, remember, Kool-Aid was, they gave you a certain amount of sugar, a certain amount of the packet. And they said, well, it's 2 cups of sugar, a gallon of water, and this packet full of like red dye number 3 that's going to give you cancer of the rectum in about, so you got that. Tang, all it is orangey goodness.
But anyhow,
pre-show, Russ.
Let's talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not who's made the cut so far. That's not such a big deal. The big deal is there's an award that's given out there for TV and radio called the Pete Roselle Award. And for years, Colin Cosell, Howard Cosell's grandson, has been trying to get Howard Cosell in. Believe it or not, and Frank Gifford tried to get him in, and other people tried to get him in, and he is still not in. Joe Buck was voted in this past year in 2020. If Joe Buck is in, he isn't 1/5 what Howard Cosell was to Monday Night Football, to all things football. Howard Cosell, he's in the Boxing Hall of Fame because, again, who interviewed Muhammad Ali every fight? It was Howard Cosell, right? Well, who did you tune into Monday Night Football for? It wasn't Don Meredith. Yeah,
Cosell. I mean, please. I mean, the only thing Dandy Don was turn out the lights. Right. The party's over.
That's it.
Zippity doo dah. And
I tuned in for Namath too when Namath was there for a while. But even to the point where remember Cosell was on The Odd Couple doing Monday Night Football.
Oh yeah.
He owned Roone Arledge. Roone Arledge basically had to listen to Cosell, and we talked about the John Lennon thing. All those things. But here's another thing radio-wise that maybe younger people wouldn't know. We always hear now that 1 minute that CBS does or everybody does, and it's like, this is Boomer Esiason for the blah, 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 State Farm 1 minute, and he gives you 1 minute of whatever he's thinking about for the NFL or MLB or whatever. Cosell started that. It was called Howard Cosell Speaking of Sports. Do you remember that? It used to be everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
But I brought it up before. It might have been a 30 for 30, but I remember there was a one of those HBO documentaries on Jim McKay where they were talking about the Munich situation in '72, and Cosell was pushing to be the guy who was. Now he wasn't part of the Olympic coverage unless he did boxing for the Olympics.
Yeah, he probably did do boxing.
But it ended up being Jim McKay, and we all know that Jim McKay earned a lot of respect in his career for being a serious news guy in a.
Oh yeah, no, I watched it. It was, you'll never see anything like that again. Hopefully.
Yeah, and Adam in the chat, yes, he broke the news about John Lennon. I heard something that he was informed by the ABC affiliate in New York, and they were informed by somebody who was at the hospital. So it basically went right to and at that point it was 11:30, and they were on, and everyone.
So it was probably Bill Butel that told him.
I mean, who knows?
Or Howard K. Smith, someone like that.
Oh Jesus, yeah. No.
But the point is, Cosell deserves this, and the fact that Canton has not put him in there is criminal. It's really awful. We all have favorite football players that we believe should be in there, and look, of all the Hall of Fames, they let the most in every year. Now they do have the biggest rosters, but still, sometimes there's seems like there's 10 guys.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the list of 15 that they whittled down to. Yeah. A little pissed off that that Steve Tasker, who has
should be there,
who has made the list before but then not selected, didn't get on the top 15 list.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Joe Klecko's not there, he's the one for me because he was either a Pro Bowler at 2 or 3 different positions.
Right. End tackle and nose tackle.
Right, which is crazy. Like, maybe he didn't win a championship, but that's more on the Jets than it's on Joe Klecko. And he was in Smokey and the Bandit. So, I mean, just remember that.
And NASCAR 427 brings up in the chat. I wonder if this guy from Wide World of Sports who went through like he comes down the ski lift,
the ski guy, yeah,
hits all the bear. I wonder if he is alive still, because
I believe he is. I think I remember they did a story on him maybe like 15, 20 years ago.
Because that guy should get rights, should get copyright.
Yeah, he was doing like a helicopter and he didn't mean to.
Right, but I mean, he was showed every week on Sunday on Wide World of Sports, and everybody's like, "Oh, that guy should have gotten money for that."
Yeah, well, in those days, you didn't get money for a lot. And I Love Lucy got a lot of money, but she had to come up with the thought of reruns. Nobody had that thought. It was Desi Arnaz actually that came up with the idea. Nobody used to get residuals. So,
Unfortunately, we had to see Lucy all the time.
Oh, that was a great show. Shut up.
No, she's from Western New York.
Were you more of an Ethel guy? Is that what you're going to say?
No, I was not big into Ethel Mertz. Sorry.
Was that Vivian Vance? Was that her name?
Vivian Vance. No. She didn't do it for me either. I do not have an affinity for Lucille Ball. But anyway,
I hated Fred. I hated Ethel's husband, Fred Mertz. I hated that MFer. I did.
I loved Mary Tyler Moore, especially as Dick Van Dyke's young wife.
That was a good show
on the Dick Van Dyke Show.
She was great on both.
She was great on both. Oh, don't get me wrong. She was fantastic. Great.
It's so weird. Like, we only watched that show in reruns. I didn't watch that show when it was live. But what was her name? Laura Petrie. Like, how do you remember that stuff? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, Laura Petrie.
Dick Van Dyke.
He's still alive.
Yeah, he's like 97.
Yeah, God bless him. Anybody wants to laugh their ass off, do a search on YouTube of Tim Conway. It was Tim Conway, Carol Burnett, Dick Van Dyke, and Vicki Lawrence. It was on the Carol Burnett show, and it was a scene where they were doing like the Mama's Family thing.
Oh yeah.
It's a famous blooper because essentially Tim Conway was going on and on about this story about an elephant. He's cracking up Carol Burnett. He's cracking up Dick Van Dyke. And all of a sudden, Vicki Lawrence says something that they obviously couldn't air. And they all burst out laughing because they could not hold back their laughter.
Yeah, I mean, Harvey Korman was always the worst at holding it back. And he was great, but Tim Conway did a pretty good job of holding back because he was a deadpan funny kind of guy.
But it got to the point on that show, and I loved it, is the fact that they were openly laughing at stuff.
Oh yeah,
and they didn't mind because normally.
But if you notice, Jerry Seinfeld couldn't hold back any laughs.
Right,
like he was always smirking, laughing at the commentary,
or he would turn his head.
Yes.
So okay, all right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, January 6th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eklund will be joining us in a few moments, but we will start with the game of the night, the game of the year so far, since it's only January 6th. The U.S. and the Canadians in the World Junior Gold Medal game. It is, I think, was one of the best all-around performances by an American club that I've seen, at least in the last 10 to 15 years at the World Junior. And they've won, this was their 4th gold medal win over Canada, I believe. But I think this was the most complete victory. And it was only a 2-0 win, Russ, but they played a great team game and put Canada in a position where they weren't used to it, meaning they were behind. They got punched in the nose. I said this like early in the second period. They were punched in the nose by the U.S. The U.S. came out. They weren't intimidated. They were faster. They were more tenacious. They got the 1-0 lead. They got a second goal by Zegras early in the second period. And at that point, I said, there's going to be a response here, but we have to see what Canada is going to do because they haven't been in this position before. And for about 10 to 12 minutes, they were absent without leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think Team Canada was the bug, and I think Team USA's defense was the windshield. And I really do think that, they did smother them. They really did. And look, I picked Canada out of respect and that roster.
Sure.
Because that roster plays to its capability. They can beat anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew the U.S. could win. I knew they could win. There's no question. And I wrote about it in different ways and spoke about it on Sirius. How could they win? And one of the things I had said is, hey, they could win if they could shut down Dylan Cousins. But I remember even on the show, we're like, yeah, if you shut down Cousins, like there's Perfetti and there's all these other guys. But when they shut down Cousins, it really did shut them down for a while, that was shocking to me. But again, that does go along with the one premise that we did talk about a little bit, which was, sometimes when a guy's driving the bus too much and all of a sudden the bus doesn't go and,
everybody's dependent on them.
Dependent on that. Like the Flyers were with Forsberg. Like there are so many teams that have gone through that.
Yeah, but that's more under, and I'm not tearing down Dylan Cousins because he's an excellent player. He's going to probably be a really good NHL player. But that usually happens with a Forsberg, with a Lafreniere top pick, with an Austin Matthews, or with a Connor McDavid. The team becomes so dependent on them that the secondary players, when that player doesn't show up or that player doesn't have a good game, then they have to pick it up, and they're so used to that star player carrying the ball that they're not ready for. I mean, really, I got the impression that was a little bit of the case because Cousins was so dominant for them. I mean, I picked him as the because you had to pick the MVP for the All-Star team before the first period of the last game, and I picked Cousins because Cousins, I think, was the most dominant player in the tournament. I
felt that way too. And actually, I know it's easy to say Trevor Zegras should have been the MVP when he won it. Like that's the right pick. Yeah. If you think about it now. What was Team Canada without Dylan Cousins? There were more people doing secondary scoring for the U.S. in that game than anybody for Canada, and even the game before.
Yeah, and see, it's funny, and I get this. When a team is so favored and that they don't win, there's going to be recriminations, and there's going to be that.
Oh, there's always rethinking. There's
going to be that after game analysis. What did we do wrong? Who did we choose wrong? Why did we lose to an inferior? Okay, I don't think the U.S. was an inferior team. You got to remember first of all, you got to remember how many players from the U.S. and from other countries didn't get into this tournament because either their NHL teams kept them, like Lafreniere. You think Lafreniere makes a difference on this team?
Sure.
I mean, Kirby Dach makes guys.
If you want to go with Kirby Dach because he was there and got injured, that's fine. Right. If you want to go with Beecher and Master Simone and Vlasic, and you want to go down that list for the U.S., they're really good players that didn't get to go because of the COVID situation and because of the protocol. And, that's something where, okay, so we have to move past that a little bit and just go with what was on the ice. But I will say that as far as for the U.S. program, right, they're fifth in World Junior history, they're fifth gold. This game will be memorable for a lot of reasons. And, the shutouts for Spencer Knight, especially the way it started for Spencer Knight. I can't tell you how many people were probably surprised when I wrote for Full Press Hockey that Knight needs to start the next game. I wouldn't even consider Dustin Wolf. And I like Dustin Wolf, but you had to go with Spencer Knight. He was the goalie with a pedigree, and you had to just let him figure it out. The good thing about Nate Lehman is I might have, not been happy with some of the line combinations, but he knew Spencer Knight from being a college coach. And that was probably the most valuable thing on this whole entire team because he never wavered or panicked from that.
Right. No, Funky in the chat says they rode Cousins. Yeah, they did. I think and they became too dependent on him.
They were.
Yeah. Now, they got performances. They got secondary performances like Newhook in the game against Russia was fantastic. But I do think that they became too dependent on their star players. And I also think that the U.S. played an effective U.S. played an effective game. Pierre LeBrun made the observation that the U.S. played a fantastic 5-man defensive strategy against the Canadians for most of the for all the first two periods, and probably for most of the third before Canada sort of started.
Yeah, but when you write it like that, you're making it seem like the U.S. sat back and almost trapped, and they didn't do that. They weren't even close to doing that.
They attacked 100% back them.
Let's let Ek give us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, the U.S. attacked them completely. I mean, that's like that. I mean, they and then someone said, on the broadcast, that they brought Canada's game to them, and I mean, yeah, sure, that's kind of what they did, with an exception. And I was tweeting, we were texting about this a lot. I was texting you guys about this a lot. That really bothered me about Canada's game was that they did seem dead set, like for the first half of the game, that they were going to carry the puck over the blue line and make plays. And the crazy thing about that is, I know that, when you dump the puck, you got to work harder. You got to cycle the puck. You got to do things. And they've got so much skill and they've had so much success. It felt like a little bit of a laziness thing of like, okay, we don't have to do this.
I don't think it was laziness. I think it was tactical because Russ, like I said to you when we were talking earlier, I think the Canadians looked at the U.S. defense with Bjork, with Sanderson, with a few others, that they were mobile enough that if they played dump and chase, they would be able to be quick enough to get back into the corner and get the puck and just turn it the other way instead of them being slow enough for the big Canadian forwards to lay the body on them and steal the puck. I think it was tactical. And then at the halfway point, when they're down 2-0, they probably had to abandon that and try something different because they knew that wasn't working.
Yeah, I mean, it's tactical, but it's like if you're the better team, you can sit there and say the defensemen are strong and quick, and they are, and all those guys are strong. But so are the Canadian forwards, and so are the Canadian defensemen, who really were like the defense. People never really notice the fact that your defense is a huge part of your dump and chase forecheck. Like that is, it's your defense being able to pinch, being able to cycle, being able to keep the puck in.
Yeah,
those little things, and the Canadian defense is amazing at that. So to me, this was kind of like a no-brainer. And what it also does is it also sows chaos. Like it gives some craziness to the zone. And it definitely was apparent to me that when Spencer Knight was set, he was going to be unbeatable. But if you wanted to throw things around, if you put things around, excuse me, you could get him. You could get him off balance if you tried.
Right.
Well, I'm going to say this, Ek. We knew that they were keeping him to the outside and the middle of the ice was getting cleared. It's nice to say that. But if I was the coach, I would have been challenging my guys for Canada, who is willing to pay the price and get in the middle and stay in the crease and take that beating. I got to be honest. In that second period, I think the answer was nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like about midway through, like there was one there was a couple like really interesting times when even the simple aspect of the dump and chase to change your line,
right?
Like even that wasn't happening, and that really puts you on the in a precarious position a lot because they had to change the lines, they had to wait for stoppages or change the lines on the fly.
Well, I mean, Russ, two things that overall impressed me. One, the effectiveness of the U.S. bottom six getting in the face of the Canadian defensemen, not just for a shift or two, but for most of the first two periods of the game. And then I think the U.S. sort of changed strategy a little bit because the Canadians were coming at them. But I think that there was a heavy forecheck. They were on the defense, stealing the puck, getting on them, not just physically, but just being tenacious and being in the corner. And boy, is Beniers going to be a superstar. Yeah. I mean, that rush that he had, I think it was in the early third period, where he went around the Canadian like there were a bunch of pylons.
He's got to grow a little bit. He's got to grow a little bit, but if he grows a little bit.
I mean, of course he's going to grow a little bit. It's interesting because like with that third line, again, I do think Brink sort of got the short end of the stick and being asked to be a forechecker and not being able to really score the way he could score. So
I thought he had one of his best games though last night. Honestly, I mean,
he's a hockey player, but not as like a scorer.
Not as a scorer, but he defensively, made a huge block in the penalty kill.
Yeah, he was willing to pay the price. I give the kid tremendous credit. But here's the interesting part: of both teams, the toughest player on the ice was Brett Berard, the Rangers draft pick, and he's 5'10". Like he was going into guys, he didn't care how big they were. Yeah, and I was surprised there was very little retaliation.
And something with Brink that I really noticed last night, and it's similar because this player had the same problem with Team Canada in the World Juniors. and it worked out fine. And ironically, another Flyer is Travis Connecty, right? Travis Connecty was also put on the third line, if you remember.
Yes,
and he's not a third line player.
And he was not a third line player, but got a lot, and plays. He does. They play a very similar game.
They do.
And
Connecty's a better skater. We have to.
He's a better skater. Brings probably better defensively.
Yeah.
But but the anticipation, they're both very quick, and their first step is very quick. Like both of them have Brink a couple times picked off passes with
Brink's first step has gotten better since last year. It has
very explosive first step. I thought, especially and also the anticipation combined with the first step, picking off passes, things like that. I thought I was more impressed with him last night than I have been in the rest of the tournament, even though. He wasn't, putting himself in the score.
And I'll tell you what about Beniers. I was having a chat with Shane Malloy, who I do a lot of work with, obviously, and everybody knows him. The thing about Beniers, he had a good point. Like when there's a good running back who could cut and make you basically fake you out of your jock, that's what Beniers really is able to do.
Yeah, yes.
He has excellent speed, but it does make him seem faster because he knows how to tune it up. Bring it down.
That rush, Russ, was not speed. It was elusiveness.
It was.
He went. He literally went around good Canadian defenders.
Like 3 guys.
They were probably like one of the top draft picks next year. Though I mean,
he's going to be in the top 7.
Yeah.
I mean,
no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, he might be top 5 based on this tournament.
Let me make one other point, and then we got to talk about the barrel controversy, which I think is just ridiculous. This is a game in this tournament where the lack of a crowd was the most apparent because there were a couple instances, and I'd say in the late second period, where Canadian defenders laid out a U.S. player. And if that building was full of 19,000 rabid Canadian fans, that it would have been a rush of momentum and enthusiasm and adrenaline into these guys. And they make the hit and there's nothing there and the U.S. just keeps going. I think that could have turned things around. Now, maybe not. Maybe the U.S. just goes past that and survives. But I think that the Canadians missed the fact that they had the home crowd there, and that would have injected them with some enthusiasm.
We're going to see. I agree with that. And we really are going to do it's going to be interesting this year. I'm going to track it a little bit in my mind, like what the lack of a crowd does mean in certain situations, because
how are you going to get data on that?
You didn't really get data on it, but I think with the ability of us, the credential people being able to be there, it's going to be interesting to see because we've been there in situations, obviously, with the crowd.
Like after a big check, when a guy kind of does that to the crowd,
we've seen that we've been there. We've seen how momentum can be picked up from a crowd.
Yeah.
I want to see how that changes when the crowd's not there with the play that would have been a crowd play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to see that. That's really why I think the NHL needs some kind of like real time thing. I want
to see the analytics on like Ty Domi laying somebody out and going
right
biceps or something.
Right. I mean, you do that without a crowd, and you're going to get yourself killed.
By the other
team. The other team is going to. And I mean, it's one thing to do that with the crowd. It's another thing. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there are benefits to not having a crowd. Like I think younger players, probably prefer it.
There's less pressure that way.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing in front of 20,000 people, and you make a bad pass or give up the puck, that's a bigger deal.
I think if you're a Toronto Maple Leaf and you make a bad play, you don't have to worry about getting booed.
Yeah, right. You're not going to get the boos.
No, you just got to be worried about being pelted with like rotten fruit as you're walking down Yonge Street.
And again, I think the NHL needs to have on their app, like when you're watching the game or whatever, a button for cheering and booing that would equate to something. I think that would be really good. But instead of just automatically pumping in, I mean, are they going to pump in fake crowd sounds in the NHL?
They're going to have to do something. Yeah, I believe they will. Like I said, I just don't want them to do what the NFL teams, like my team, the Jets. They still have the same guy doing the same call, like it's 3rd and 5, and it's like we're at home. We know.
Yeah, no.
There's nobody to rile up in my living room.
Yeah, like Luno and goal scores and things like that.
A goal call is fine.
Give me $1 for every time we hear the train noise on 3rd down in an empty stadium in Buffalo.
It doesn't work. You got to do it a different way. You definitely have to do it a different way.
Yeah.
And you know what I would be in favor of? Getting crowd noise from the previous season.
Right. So that's what I'm really. I wish they would do that. I'm completely
use that sample.
They have that. You know what I mean? And you can't tell me they don't have that. I mean, they're recording everything. They record everything in multi-tracks. You know, they have that stuff.
That's what they should use,
as opposed to doing like the EA Sports version of it, which is what they did.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's cheesy.
But they did it in the bubble.
I know, and I
think those cheering it's just very different because every crowd has its own thing, you know. And I think that it would be way better. And it's not just the crowd; it's also the acoustics of the building.
I'll tell you the difference. You know what the difference is, Zach? The guy as an example, the guy in the EA game isn't like a 250-pound guy that just downed a couple of Genos, had 2 beers, and while he's doing it, may burp at the same time. They don't do that on the EA game, but they do it in Philly.
Yeah. They definitely do it in Philly, and you'll hear it, you know. But I do think that to me is a really good. Is going to be one of the more interesting things to look for. But I do want to see how it affects older teams versus younger teams, things like that.
Yeah, but I would agree, it definitely hurt Canada because they certainly would have gotten a rise. I don't know if it would have been enough to get them a goal. Like, you know, that's the first time Canada's ever been shut out in a gold medal game. Like, that's
now, were they pumping crowd noise in there at all?
Not much. I didn't think they were doing anything.
We don't even know. Like, I mean, because when we were listening,
it didn't sound like any at all.
I didn't notice there was no crowd noise, so they were definitely pumping some into the broadcast at least.
A little, but it wasn't much.
Yeah. And then again, you know, sometimes these World Juniors, I mean, the thing about the World Juniors and stuff like that, we're kind of not completely, it's not a new thing to see them playing in empty arenas because we've seen that before.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these games, you know, obviously not like the big final games like that, but a lot of these games, if they're playing this Belarus or whatever, are being played to like, you know, a couple hundred people.
Let's talk about the barrel thing because I guess they used like a trash can, whatever they could find, but, and it had a Canadian logo.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with Canada. This started and I basically transcribed. I went on and I transcribed it for Nate Lehman, and it goes back to 2007 when Lehman was an assistant and Ron Rolston was the head coach, and they started to do it apparently when people used to try and cross the Sahara Desert. A lot of people would die. The way they stopped that from happening is they would have barrels and they would put the barrels in key places and you would get from one barrel to the other. So basically they turned that into like a hockey cliche of one game at a time. Right. And so that's where all of that came from. It had nothing to do with Canada. It wasn't like Juju Smith dancing on the Star in Dallas. It was not, or Terrell Owens. It wasn't like that.
No, I'll give Zegras. I'll give Zegras credit because it takes a lot of guts, and he backed it up because he had a goal and an assist. And coming out before the game and essentially saying what I said yesterday on the Buzzcast about Canada in the sense that, you know, they're a juggernaut, but really who had they played and how, and they, you know, they had scored 41 goals, 4 against. They had been trailed for a minute. He basically said the goalie hasn't really been tested, and
5 on 5.
What's that? 5 on 5, right? And who have they played? Now they played the Russians. The Russians are a good team, but really, I mean, I think it was a valid point, and he backed it up. He scored a goal. He had an assist. He was the MVP of the tournament. He backed it up. If you're going to hate that guy for having the confidence to say what I think was the truth, now, you know, Canada could have proved him wrong and made him have egg on his face. They didn't. He won the MVP. He won the gold medal. So he has to be given credit for being, I'd say, very forceful in his point of view.
And some of that
shows leadership, and that's a good thing.
And some of that, I think, is actually more important when there's no fans in the crowd. Like, I think that also plays into that, you know, because it's like you're trying to get – I mean, you shouldn't have to get yourself motivated to play for a gold medal against Canada, but still – the crowd would definitely get you there. Having that little bit of extra, like, you know, even if you're by putting yourself out there, like the most famous one, of course, is like Messi's guaranteed win. It wasn't like he was doing that, but you know, but the guaranteeing of wins, you know, that what that does to a team and what that does, how it works for you or against you, it's okay. I mean, to me, I've always loved the kind of stuff. I think it puts an edge on it, and especially you need that kind of edge when you're playing without the crowd.
And the other thing, Eck, you did see a sense afterwards, and again, this isn't a slight to Canada, but because Canada's was more of an all-star team, and I made this a point in an article to say, you might have had 19 first-round picks, but that doesn't mean you are a better team. It just means you have guys picked in the first round. I always try and stress that. But the point was, when you have so many teammates in real life on a team, like Moynihan and Berard are teammates, like Faber, Lacombe, and I forget who else are teammates.
Right.
Like when you're teammates in the regular season and now you're on this team, but you're still have your teammates there, that's a big deal. And the U.S. actually had more of that than Canada did.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you. 1 second, guys. We'll be right there. 1 second.
Yeah.
So I just felt like that was a big deal.
I totally agree. I think that was a huge deal.
Yeah, for cohesiveness and just, it was nice. And I'll tell you, I think they should change the closing ceremonies now and always let the captain hand out the awards. Who cares if somebody from the IIHF hands out an award? It was so much better having the team captain do it, patting the guys on the head, giving a hug. It was great.
Yeah, and I honestly, okay, we were both in the building, Russ, in I think it was 2018 when Elias Anderson threw the silver medal into the crowd.
Yep.
Okay. These guys want to win. They're interested in getting the gold medal. Honestly, I don't think it's great to have the team that has lost stand there and accept the consolation prize. And if they want, they want the gold, they want the silver medal, give it to them in the locker room. They don't have, why do they have to be there when the other team is, getting what they wanted? And, you saw guys like Bo and Byron crying, and I understand, they've invested almost 2 months in being in a bubble and working their asses off.
Was it 54 days, something like that?
Yeah, 51 days.
51 days. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot of time to be away from your family, to be, and all that to win a gold medal. And then at the end, you don't get the gold medal. And then at the very end, you've got to watch the team that beat you get what you wanted and celebrate and jump all over each other, which they're going to do because they're young kids. And then Mob Talk Radio says it's about respect. Hey, I'm sure the Canadians respect the U.S. The commentary that they had after the game said that they respected them. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't think it's great that the team has to watch the other team celebrate, almost like it's rubbing in their face. Let them go in the locker room and get their second place gold, silver medals there and commiserate and do it in private instead of having to give out their emotions on the ice in front of everybody.
You make a good point, because that's what's better about the consolation game, because like the other team who loses, who's not going to medal, they get to walk away. Right. The top three from the team, they get to walk away. And that's why the bronze medal winners aren't like that sad, because, hey, we won something. This is something. Yes. And the Finns did it with a lot of class. They did.
Right. I don't disagree with that. I would never have a problem. I always sort of bothered by it because I think it takes away from the celebration too.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially if you're there, it's like it's a very weird vibe.
Yeah. Shake hands. That like in last night, U.S. and the Canadians, they should shake hands. The Canadians go to the locker room. They get their silver medal. Mm-hmm. And obviously it's an emotional thing. They're going to be in the locker room. It's private. And then the U.S. the winning team gets the ice. And it's all joyful, and it's all victorious, and it's all jubilant. And if it was the other way around, the Canadians would have that, and the U.S. would be in the locker room.
I don't think you can do that, because I do think there's that natural release of emotion that has to happen. So to me, I think the losing team is allowed to go back to the locker room and talk for a second, like just have like be.
Well, they just be stoic like the old days, Zach. Why do we have to talk all the time?
No, but just get off the ice, and then once the celebration is over, bring them back out. And
okay, I see.
And have them line up then and get their medals and all that stuff. That's fine. But while the celebration is going on, why does the other team have to remain on the ice in the arena or whatever? Just take them to the room, and then the coach says a couple things. Coach says a couple things to them right away. You guys did a great job. And give them a set amount of time, 10 minutes. Bam, they come back out. That would naturally be an end to the celebration, because the team will be like, oh, they're back. I think that would work. I think that would work perfectly well, and I don't know why it doesn't. I don't know why they don't do it.
So it was a great tournament, and it wasn't great just because the U.S. won. I didn't like the fact that teams were compromised, and I'll still say that. But in the end, it still was a success. It was.
Yeah, it was a success. It was. I would say it was a monumental effort by the IIHF and the city of Edmonton, and because after they got there, I don't think anyone tested positive. So it was similar to the bubble in the NHL. So they were able to effectively, obviously players for Germany and a couple other teams caught COVID early. They came back. So it was well run. It was, I think, well officiated. I don't think anybody had a problem with being all Canadian refs. I don't think there was favoritism when it came to any team.
No.
Canadian refs were great. So I think all in all, it was a great tournament. And yeah, like you said, Russ, it's not because the U.S. won, but I think you also saw, and this is the thing, leading up to the draft, probably in July or late July or early August, this might be the only opportunity to have an international competition where players like Beniers, players like Elias, who you mentioned for Germany, get exposure to help their draft stock. We probably will have a combine in Buffalo, but we might not. And that's only going to be testing, the measurables. It's not going to be testing how these guys play on the ice. So this might be the last thing that is given to NHL teams about how these players can play.
And there's one last thing. So there was that interview with the Canadian Hockey League commissioner, and I don't think he was being completely honest, because he said they were going to start on like the 21st. That's our intention. Our intention is to start on the 21st. I'm hearing there are places tomorrow in Canada that are going to code red, and people's kids are going to start coming back home like it was at the worst points of the pandemic. So how are you going to start your league again?
Yeah, I mean, a few days ago, officials for the 5 provinces came out and gave basically blanket provisional access for the NHL for those teams.
Right.
That they're not dependent on the 14-day quarantine. They're not giving that to American League hockey teams, and they're not giving it to CHL teams. So I would seriously doubt. I keep saying this. I will be the most shocked if you see one OHL, WHL, or Q game the rest of the season. I don't think they're playing.
Yeah, I agree. But, Mike, this is the point. The other point of that is, and then I'm done with this, when he said that also preempted any hope of like some of these Canadian Hockey League kids hanging around the NHL but not getting penalized for playing because there won't be a season because they're not going to admit it.
Right.
At a certain point, they're going to have to.
Yeah, I know, but it could be in March.
It could be in March, but the thing is, it's like, for example, like Jack Quinn and Cousins are going to Buffalo, going to Buffalo's training camp. Now, they have to quarantine for 7 days, but once they do that, Ralph Kruger can play them up to 6 games without it having any kind of effect.
Right. Yeah. So then, the camp's going to be over in 7 days, though. I mean, so they're just reporting to the state.
It's a reward. It's really for Quinn. It's a reward. He's not NHL ready. He wasn't even. I mean, to really be fair, he wasn't World Junior ready.
So let's talk about these contracts that came out this morning and how they may affect things. And I'm sure that we're going to have some rumors popping up, coming off at least one of them, and that's the Bjork Strand contract.
Yeah. Because
I'll tell you something right now. If I'm Pierre-Luc Dubois and you thought I was asking for a trade beforehand, I'm asking for a trade now because they pay. Now, I like Bjork Strand. I think he's
he's their leading goal scorer. Remember, he scored more goals than anybody else last year. For
that. Yeah, quality player. He's only 25.
Yep.
He was on a bridge deal. Now he's given $5.4 million for 5 years, excuse me, with a modified no trade. What this is telling me, this is Yarmo saying, okay, we were willing to give you some of the money long term there, Pierre-Luc, but since you didn't, you only took a 2-year deal, we're going to give it to Bjork Strand. Right. That's what I think this is, and it's like, maybe that's the right way to manage it.
I think that's what you got to do. I mean, knowing Yarmo, this is just like a matter of fact situation. Like this is like, yeah, he would probably agree. He probably wouldn't disagree with what Mike said there. He would say, yeah, what? Honestly, we got to do what's best for us, and if we can get him, we got to, it's more than ever now. We need to make sure we can tie up guys who can score goals for us. Like I don't see any reason why that.
But now that money has been set, Mike is right. Pierre-Luc Dubois sees that, and it's like, okay, guys, like, that's fine. You could pay him, but I am way better than he is.
Yeah, and they're going to spend the big money on one or both of Seth Jones and Werenski.
Yep.
So, and
that's what Torts would want him to do.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, what this tells me is that right now Dubois is in a, Bobrovsky, Panarin situation where now the only thing is he doesn't have the ability to leave via UFA and them get nothing for him. But it's clear, like he's made it clear to them, okay, I'm not happy with the situation here. Now I'm not happy with a 2-year deal making $5 million. I don't have long-term security. He's going to want to go someplace where he gets long-term security, and he's going to want to go someplace where he can put up the numbers to get somebody to pay him big money, and he's not going to get that in Columbus.
No, I've got a massive NHL story here.
I mean, but before you do that, real quick, and finish that point, name me the top 5 players who have asked for trades and ended up becoming great players on the teams that they were on when they asked for the trade.
Patrick Waugh.
What was that?
Patrick Waugh is one.
Patrick Waugh, but he won't. No. I'm not talking about the team that ended up not being traded and stayed in where it was a dominant player.
Vinny Lecavalier.
Lecavalier wanted to leave, but stayed in Tampa anyway.
Yeah,
I'll give you that. But by that point, Lecavalier wasn't the great. Didn't have like a great. I mean, by the point he asked for a trade, I mean that wasn't that early on. He asked for the trade. I remember it, right?
No, it was before they won the cup. It was
before they won the cup. Yeah,
he was like 01 or 02.
He was tired.
All right, there's one, but
killed for being the overall pick.
Funky says Fedorov in the chat.
Yep, Fedorov.
Okay. Yep. So it happens, but it's rare, and I think the reality is here that if you're the GM of Columbus, you've got to realize that it's rare. That you got to realize that in all likelihood we're losing this guy, so we've got to do what we can to keep scoring around.
Right, but what Yarmo will do as an intelligent general manager is he's not gonna bow to pressure right now. They've got him under contract for 2 years. You could see, and I'm sure we're gonna have rumors, Zach, before the deadline, depending on where Columbus finishes or where they are in the division at that point. If they're out of the playoff race, you could see them. Okay, we're shopping Dubois. We're expecting like your top 3 prospects in your organization for him. And if they don't get that, then they have another year, and then he's an RFA, and they still could hold on to him for 2 more years. So, the ball is in Yarmo's court, but he's got a lot of leverage.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Zach, I noticed this a day ago from Spectre was putting this out, and now there's a tweet from a place called Puck Report, put out an injury report. They did it. They rounded it all up from the 4th. Listen to this injury report. Alex Goligoski, unavailable to play. Barrett Hayton, unavailable to play. Antti Raanta, unavailable to play. Marchand, we know about. Pasternak, we know about. Zemgus Girgensson, very questionable lower body at camp. Evan Barrett, unfit to participate. Kirby Dach, we know. Nylander, we know. Seabrook, we know. Suter, we know. Page, we know. Philip Grubauer, unfit to play. Eric Johnson, unfit to play. Gabriel Landeskog, unfit to play. Keaton Middleton, unfit to play. Brandon Saad, unfit to play. And there's at least 7 more players on this list. I've got to tell you, for one thing, if you're a fantasy hockey player, good luck to you this season because to keep up with these guys. But I'm also telling you, teams, this is going to be a nightmare of a year for coaches.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the rules in regards to revealing a reason why a player is on the injured list are still in place from the return to play from the playoffs until the beginning of the regular season. And then I would assume the reason that they're going to be more forthcoming at that point is because people are gambling on these games via FanDuel and other sites, and they have to reveal how long term these guys are out and what the reasons are that they're out. So that's probably the reason for the change. But I'll say this, like Girgensson, for example.
Yeah.
He's out for the year. He just had hamstring surgery. They're using the cover of unfit to play as a coverall for everything. So that includes COVID. And we don't know how many of these players had COVID or have COVID.
Yeah. Right.
And so that right now they're just not interested in being too revealing into what's going on with these players.
Another big thing going on with COVID now in sports, which is like another story altogether, but I don't know if you're following it in college football and other football areas where some of the kids who've gotten COVID are coming back and having enlarged hearts.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Myocarditis. Thank you.
Yeah, you're seeing this in a couple real high profile players, but also a couple guys that aren't being written about all that much. And I was talking.
Well, Eduardo Rodriguez, a left-handed pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, he got COVID. He could not play the entire season because of myocarditis. So and who knows? I mean, we'll find out in spring training whether he's okay
and
or
it
not.
also affects blood vessels, so that's why when we keep hearing about some people with brain aneurysms, a lot of times COVID has something to do with that because it does affect your blood vessels.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, there's this,
but not everybody. Everybody gets affected differently. That's what you're basically saying.
Yeah, no, everyone does get affected differently, but at the end of the day, you know, that the concept of athletes being able to recover from this is something that
it's not as bulletproof as it was once thought. I agree with you on that.
Right, and you just long term, we have no idea. Like 5 years from now.
Yeah. Now the other contract that was signed was Luke Cunnin. It was not, you know, I mean, you knew it was going to eventually get done. He was an RFA with no ability to sign an offer sheet or anything like that. He went to Nashville in the trade a couple months ago, and now he gets a 2-year deal at $2.3 million.
That's good for him. That's fair.
I think that's a good prove-it deal because he's got to prove to Nashville that he can be more than a 30 to 35 or 40.
But you might as well take 30% off his goal scoring because that's the Nashville tax.
Yeah.
Now, okay, we're not gonna kick a dead horse here, but since Zach put this in the chat, I just have to go on this. Arthur Staple reported what Elliot Friedman reported yesterday. A 4-year deal for Matt Martin. I don't know if that's 1.15. The report from Friedman said 1.5.
Right.
Okay. That's all fine and great. It's still not official. He's still on a PTO. It's been reported by reporters who are good and I trust, but Lou hasn't filed the paperwork. At least it's not on Cap Friendly. It's not been announced by the team. They have 3 guys on PTOs. They're in limbo because they can't get a deal done with Matt Barzal.
Right. And we have to come to the grips of this. And I'm not saying this. I know Islander fans are going to want to rip me, and that's fine. But I'm just saying you have to come to grips with the fact that if they gave Barzal what he wanted, whether it be in a short-term deal or a long-term deal, he would be in camp. They had the ability to do it now. And the reason he's not in camp is because they haven't agreed to what he feels are his terms. And there's no telling how long that's going to take. He could be tomorrow. He could be at the end of camp. We don't know.
Now, Funky, yes, I don't get the 4 years. I think the 4 years were.
I don't either.
It was 4 years because I think they want to dissuade a team because they're going to expose Martin in the expansion draft. They want to dissuade Seattle from taking him on because then he's got 3 more years. And, you know, he's a role player. He's a physical guy. I don't think they want, you know, they don't want to have to pay Seattle to keep Matt Martin. So they're making it untenable for them to take on the contract and having 3 years for a guy who's 31, 32. Yeah, that's not the greatest investment for an expansion team. So I think that's the reason why.
Thomas, you're wrong. There's no more waiting for LTIR. He could have been signed already. They had the money.
Right. They can put Hickey on LTIR.
Right.
They can send Andrew Lang.
I stand by. This is a Lou Lamoriello trick. He's used it before. I remember one year I was pretty close, good buddies with like Brian Rafalski. And you know, when he was playing, and I would get, you know, talk to him, and I knew he was going to sign with New Jersey, and just extended. He was with New Jersey, but just extend. But it didn't get announced until like the day before the season. I knew the contract. I couldn't write about it, but I knew it for months. This is the way that they work sometimes. This is the way Lou works. I think this is completely. I think Martin knows what he's getting, and
I don't know. As far as all that, yes.
But so does it really matter that does Lou care that we don't see it on Cap Friendly? I mean,
no, Lou doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
But I think what Lou cares about is Matt Barzal is missing camp.
Right.
No, but he, you know,
but the way it works, the way they can open up the most cap space, according to Cap Friendly, the Islanders are $4 million under the cap. That's without putting Boychuk on LTIR. He's on IR right now, so the $6 million salary for him counts.
Yeah, that's
What Lou is going to do, and most likely he's going to announce the signings of Martin, Schneider, and Andy Green. So they count against the cap and they get as close to 81.5 as possible. And then they put Boychuk on LTIR and open up most of the $6 million cap space. And only then will they sign Barzal. But the thing is, Russ is right. He's missing training camp. I don't care if he's skating at his own rink someplace.
And he hasn't played. He hasn't played in a while. It's not good for anybody.
No.
We don't.
But I will say this, Eck, don't you feel that this is this part is on the agent telling Barzal, stay out of camp. I might be able to get you a few more dollars. That's what it seems like to me.
It seems like that. It also could be something that Barzal has some kind of like small nagging injury, doesn't want to be in camp that we don't know about. Like that kind of, it feels like that to me as possible. You know, I don't know. But to me, it also really, the year that it happened with Rafalski was New Jersey was trying to sign a big player. Like they were trying to bring in somebody else. To me, this feels like Lou trying to bring in somebody else still. So I don't know what. And I don't know how that.
Listen, we know about Hosang. He gave him an extension, and he didn't invite him to camp. Like that's, I can't explain that. There's nobody
really. That is.
If I was Hosang, if I have a job in the KHL, I would go.
Yeah,
he's the only place you're ever playing for in the Islanders organization.
He came back from the KHL, signed this contract, and wasn't allowed in camp.
So he's going to end up at Bridgeport. Basically, what they're telling him is he's, you're not part of our plans. You're going to Bridgeport.
Yes, because he can't go back to the KHL now. He left.
Right.
He's such an anomaly, though. I mean, he's such a. I mean, he's such a. He does feel like.
I hope the Kraken get him. I hope they get Bracco, and I hope all these guys prove what they can do the same way Marchessault did, and really show it to these teams. That's what I hope.
Yeah, but not Bracco, but Hosang's a different character, right? So like,
yes, he is.
I mean, Bracco was never an issue anywhere he played. As far as
Bracco was well liked as a teammate.
But Hosang's a different character. So
I think Hosang has got the reputation problem. I don't know what he is like in terms of inside the locker room.
Right,
but
we haven't really, honestly. He had that problem.
I don't know.
That was like 3 years ago.
Right.
This is.
I don't know if there's been anything else since.
No, I agree with you. Guy let dogs in.
I don't know if anything else has happened with him since that would cause a red flag. Now, I will tell you, I saw him play in the AHL last year, and when I saw him, he still took dumb penalties, and that may be enough for Barry Trotz to say, "I don't want anything to do with him."
Right, but when he got a chance in the NHL, he showed NHL ability.
Yes, he did.
So I mean, that's
even in that game that I went to, he showed ability. Like he could skate, he could move the puck, he could score. He definitely has great vision, but he does take dumb penalties, and he does seem to have a hard time controlling emotion like a Sean Avery did.
Now this is okay. I mentioned before the Girgensons injury for the Sabres. Girgensons was probably going to be their third line center. Checking guy, penalty killing guy. It was apparently a torn hamstring. He's out for 6 months, which means the season.
Yeah.
Ralph Kruger this morning basically said we're gonna, we think that a guy like Riley Sheehan, who we brought in on a PTO, could fill some of that role. So that means Sheehan's probably going to get a contract, which I thought he was going to do anyway.
He was going to get one anyhow, I think.
Right, but now I think his role, but he also said this could mean a bigger chance for Dylan Cousins. And I talked to you about this before, Russ. He's not a center. He's not a center. That was the thing when he was drafted, when we were at the draft.
All along, yeah.
And after watching him dominate at times at the World Junior, he's a finisher. He's a power forward. He's coming off the wing, with speed and power and fighting his way around. He's not a distributor. He's not, there are sniper centers like Matthews, like people, but they also are playmakers. And I don't know whether Cousins is enough of a play. Now, they may want to give him third line. I would rather give third line minutes to Casey Middlestat than I would to Dylan Cousins. Put Dylan Cousins on the wing, but.
Yeah, and again, Dylan Cousins has to be able to get to certain areas on the ice to do his scoring. He was able to do that in the World Juniors, although not against the Americans, but he had a couple chances. But will he be able to do that in the NHL? Like, that's a big question. You don't want him going out there and getting frustrated. I mean, Kirby Dach did better than we thought, but he didn't have like a great year. And luckily he didn't get frustrated. And so it turned out to be a positive. But is he going to do any better than Kirby Dach? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that, right now, I think it would behoove the Sabres organization to not put all this pressure on Cousins and have him play in the middle. Now, even if it's third line, even if it's behind Eichel and behind Stahl. Stahl's under a contract for one more year, and Eichel, the talk continues to be if the Sabres don't get off the schneid and start winning, that he's going to request a trade. What does that mean? Well, then Dylan Cousins could be our number one center. No, you don't put that kind of pressure on a kid. It's
and I want to thank Mob Talk. He was saying that Schitt's Creek, has Funko Pops coming out. I already have a set on the way, so thank you very much.
I don't know what those are.
Yeah, it's okay. You don't need to.
Yeah, come back.
Okay, do we have some rumors?
Good Lord. Not yet. I wish I did.
Sorry.
I wish I did, but I don't yet. No, sorry, I was chasing my dog around and got out again.
I can tell you this from a Philly perspective, there doesn't seem to be any rumors whatsoever.
I have something. All right, I can't really.
There doesn't seem to be any rumors whatsoever.
I
just said that.
Boy, that didn't say that again.
Yes, but
there's something out there that's kind of weird. There's a couple teams that are surprisingly saying that certain players are not available, which is
these are players that are free agents.
Now these are players that are signed, but these are players that aren't necessarily in. These are players who say like third, fourth liners, or players who've fallen from grace who you think that they would love to get rid of the contract.
Right.
There's two guys like this. I'm working on. I'll have a story out later about it. But there's two guys I'm working on right now who have been like that. Like are guys who are. There's no reason the general manager wouldn't want to trade them because you would think they wouldn't get rid of the money. They're not really contributing to their team, and yet they're told they're not. They're being told they're not available, which is a weird. So that's something I'm working on right now.
Basically, telling me that's what Fletcher's saying about Shane Gostisbehere.
No.
Okay.
No.
Let me mention him, and then you could talk about other players.
What's happening with Gostisbehere?
Well, everybody's talking about him in the locker. Everybody in the chat room is talking about him. Okay, so when you see Shane Gostisbehere now, he doesn't have the same confidence. He still misses the net, even in these scrimmages. He skates well. There's no question, and there's no question he can move the puck. But you could see where the confidence isn't the same. It's not the same in his shot, or it would go on net. And as far as defensive coverage, it's still not great. And honestly, he might end up being an occasional player or even an everyday one if they're trying to move him. But he's a bottom pairing guy now, and that's at best.
There are three teams that want him. So people who say in the chat room that don't want him, that's not. I know of three teams that are trying to make a trade with him and are having trouble doing that, which is a little surprising because what do you think? What do you think the Flyers would want to give up for him? That's the big
they want to give up some salary.
No, not give up. I'm sorry. What do you think the Flyers would require if you say we'll take on Shane Gostisbehere?
I think really if the Flyers. Based on the fact that so far Patrick looks good, they're not looking for that center anymore. I think they would take a bottom pairing winger.
Yeah, I think so. That's
the battle in camp right now. And if they could get a veteran for that, they might go with that veteran.
So apparently Sam Moran and Patrick collided today, and Patrick left the ice. But he did come back.
Yeah, but still.
It's still not one of those things.
That's one of those things that may not show up for a day or two.
Right. But he, I think he came back and he's continued playing. But that I did hear.
Let's just say this.
That's bad for both of them, by the way, because I did see Moran get gassed a few times, and he talked about that yesterday. And so you do wonder, is he getting gassed because it's taking more effort for him to get down the ice now because of the way his knees are? It's possible.
Yeah. That's it's very possible.
Just a couple notes here.
I will have some rumors for you all tomorrow, and tomorrow we're going to start our previews, right?
No,
yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Right now,
my preview for the Northern Division is up right now. You can check that out. But
right now we have Pete Weber and Kevin Allen scheduled on Friday to do the Central Division. But we're going to have a Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday for our divisional review previews, and also then next Wednesday when the season starts, we'll be doing our predictions.
Right.
Now,
I want to answer what Mob Talk wrote here in the chat room, that the Penguins had to borrow money to pay rent to PPG Arena, $4.8 million. They got PPE money. Now, again, the partial owner there is a billionaire.
Right.
But what he did was he was like, look, he got the PPE money so that he could pay the people who work at the arena with that money. That's why he did it. He didn't. Was it Burkle, right? Ron Burkle. He didn't. Right. He didn't do it because he needs the money or the Penguins need the money.
Right.
They did it so they could pay the employees.
He did, on Christmas buy Michael Jackson's place. Did you hear about that?
Well, that was the big problem is he bought Neverland Ranch. He didn't get Bubbles, by the way, because Bubbles is in a retirement community and Bubbles will live way past all of us. But anyhow,
right.
Bubbles is in Florida. But no, the point is, he bought Neverland and people were like, well, you got a loan. And it's like, no, he got that loan so he could actually pay employees, which I think is fine. Yeah. I have no problem with that.
It is fine. It's a hard loan to get, though, for some people. We've been through it.
How thrilling that he bought Neverland. Okay.
That's a toy time. What are we here? They have a Ferris wheel there, Mike.
Okay. Here's an interesting little note from LA Kings camp. Line assignments and where certain players are playing.
Is Jeff Carter in there?
Jeff Carter is on the second line.
Okay.
With Andreas Athanasiou on the left and Blake Lizotte on. Blake Lizotte is their second line center. Now, we know that Turcotte is coming.
That's a good line to match up against the other team's best forwards.
Yes, we know that Turcotte is coming. We know that Byfield is coming. Based on this, they're going to play. But Carter's on the second line, and the top defensive pairing, Drew Doughty is playing with Olli Maatta. Olli Maatta is on their top defensive pairing. Yikes!
Sorry, Drew. I feel bad for Drew Doughty.
Right. It depends. It depends. Yes.
Listen, Tobias Bjornfot is better than Olli Maatta.
Right. And I saw something where all the LA and Anaheim prospects are flying from the World Juniors on the same plane, so they don't for lack to prevent more exposure, which is I think a good idea. I think it was.
You also saw. I think did you guys see today that the Panthers are going to be able to use the Lightning's AHL team? Like the Lightning offered to have they can send some players to Syracuse.
That's good.
Which is nice. That's a good thing. It's a good deal.
So
I think we're going to need to see more of that.
Yeah, we're going to need to see more of that, and I think I do give the Lightning some credit for that because when you do that, you're taking away some spots from your own players. That's a tough spot to be in.
Yep.
They're doing it their fellow Florida team.
It is for the good of the sport. It is.
Yeah, and they want to keep. Obviously, it behooves the Lightning to keep the Panthers in Florida. They want to have a rival across the state. They want that. That's for sure.
No, look. I don't know. I don't know how long the Panthers will stay there. That's up to this team because if they don't make the playoffs in a couple of years, I can't imagine it's going to last much longer.
Well, it may not last much longer than that if they don't re-sign Barkov. Barkov's contract. He's a UFA, I think, after this year. So that's where spending that $10 million on Bobrovsky may not have been a wise investment.
Well, it wasn't wise because now everybody sees Spencer Knight play, and I got texted all over the place. Yeah. Why did they sign Bob in the first place? And I can't defend it. We all knew Spencer Knight was going to be really good. There's no way of defending it. And now that they have Levi and Spencer Knight, honestly, at some point they're going to have to just swallow Bob's contract and let these guys develop. And that's going to happen. If Bob doesn't really get back to being Bob this year, he's probably going to get challenged by Spencer Knight next year.
Would they leave him unprotected for Seattle?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think they would. Is that the goalie that does something that
it could be? He could be the guy.
He could be like the goalie.
I could knock him into reality. Like, all right, I've got to change everything the way I'm doing everything, and maybe that's what happens.
Yeah,
the thing is that Knight doesn't have to be protected.
No, but it's still I would do it from a dollar and cent standpoint.
Right. They could sign Scott Darling to a 2-year contract, and that would be the guy they expect.
And listen, I am a big fan of Bob the guy. We know him very well. We've seen this guy grow up in the league. He is a great guy, but for whatever reason, his career has got sidetracked here, and this contract probably does put undue pressure on him. And it does. When players make a lot of money, sometimes it works in reverse.
Yeah, I agree completely. All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. We will be back again tomorrow. Thanks. We had a couple Patreon.
What about Panda? Is Panda coming back tomorrow?
Panda, what do you think? You want to come back tomorrow? Say hi. Hey.
Aw.
Yeah, she's a good dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, folks, without the buzz.
Is that a dead ghost on your couch?
No, that's the speaker.
Speaker.
That's Beaker. Yeah.
Oh, that's Beaker. I couldn't see the head. Okay.
Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all.
Actually,
tomorrow.
dead ghost is an oxymoron, but whatever.